Guys, hope all of us are doing fine. My name is Ernest, and this is Ernest Sciences and Mathematics TV channel. Before you proceed, I would like to request our members to subscribe, engage us in the comment section, and also ring that notification bell to be getting various updates on similar discussion. In this case, I usually put a link of similar discussions in our description boxes of various uploads. And also, I'd like to kindly request our members to be checking for the additional information in that specific description box. In this case, I'm going to look at the concept of major families in the periodic table, and this is going to be basically a discussion on the particular characteristics of group 1 elements of the periodic table. And this is going to assist us in interpreting the various trends we are going to witness across the S and down the S and P block elements of the periodic table, and that's going to, of course, overall assist us in trying to make a comparison between different elements in so far as their physical and chemical characteristics are concerned. Now, in our last discussion, I had mentioned that basically the periodic table can be categorized in terms of what we refer to as groups or families. And I had said that these are going to be appearing in form of what we refer to as columns. And in this case, I had also mentioned that we're going to also categorize the periodic table in terms of periods. And of course, these are going to be appearing in terms of rows. Now, these two classifications of the periodic table in terms of groups and the periods are going to be depending on their physical and chemical characteristics. And as I said, of course, from the historical development, we're going to see that this depended as well on the classification of elements, depending on their, of course, mass number, especially if we try to look at the classification which was done by Dmitry Mendeleev, and of course the work of the other scientists that we refer to as Henry Moseley. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to look at specific characteristics of group 1 elements, and those are going to be constituting the specific interaction with perhaps air, their melting and boiling points, and also their specific densities. Now, in this case, we shall also look at deeper details of particular elements, but these specific characteristics which I'm going to give are basically going to be the general ones, which may not be, of course, representative for each and every element in the periodic table. Now, in this case, group 1 elements are going to constitute of a range of elements, which are going to be basically elements of hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, and we're going to see that also rubidium, cesium, and francium. And in this particular case, we're going to see that there's going to be some of the general characteristics that we can attach to these individual or general elements in a general way, in a sense that most of them are going to be reactive, and they're going to form a range or a group of the most reactive elements being seen in the periodic table. And of course, as we're going to see, these are going to be especially falling under the category of metals, and we're going to give them a specific name of the alkali earth metals in our subsequent discussions. Now, in this case, we're also going to see that in their reaction with air, water, they are going to be exhibiting these particular characteristics of flammability. So they are going to be flammable in air and water. So in this sense, they refer to the concept of exploding into flames whenever they are coming into contact with the air or water in that particular case. And they're going to form ions, or they form ions with a charge of +1, a charge of +1 given as such. And of course, mention the concept of their melting and boiling points, whereby we're going to see that generally, in comparison with other elements or other groups of different elements in the periodic table, they are going to be having a relatively low melting point and boiling points. And of course, those are going to be one of the unique characteristics of this specific set of elements in the periodic table. And in so far as their physical characteristics are concerned, we're going to see that they are going to be soft in a sense that if we take the elements like sodium, this is going to be soft in a sense that it can be cut using a knife, and therefore that's going to be one of the specific characteristic of this specific group 1 elements. As I had said, basically, these elements are not going to be specific, and of course they are going to be general. Now, specifically for sodium, this is going to be a soft element which can be cut using a knife. And of course, in comparison with other group elements, we're going to see that they're going to exhibit low density as compared to other, of course, groups in the periodic table, as we're going to see. I'm going to provide a specific set of perhaps a sketch of the periodic table, and we're going to see which specific position of these particular elements of group 1, which is a major family, lie in the periodic table, and why it has been categorized at this specific position. Now, above I've given a sketch of the periodic table. I hope it's legible from your end. Now, this is going to constitute of various elements which have been arranged in terms of groups, which I mentioned basically are going to constitute columns. And also we are going to see that they are also arranged in terms of periods, which are going to constitute various range of rows in terms of this row 1 consisting of group 1 elements, row 2 consisting of group 2 to row 7 given as such. And in this particular case, I've color-coded this specific range of elements. Now, the major family which constitute group 1 elements have been labeled in green. And of course, we're going to see that this also include hydrogen, which has been given this specific top point. In this case, I've separated it in a sense that, of course, we're going to see that hydrogen is going to display some unique characteristics, which of course is going to be different from these other elements. Now, one of the major characteristics which I'm attached to hydrogen is that it's going to be a gas, in contrast to other elements which are going to be constituting lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and francium. And that's going to be one of the characteristics that we're going to attach to hydrogen as an element. Now, in this case also, we're going to see that it's going to be forming the lightest element in the periodic table. And as we're going to look at each of the specific groups in terms of the chemical and physical properties, I'm going to mention that one in a deeper, of course, way. Now, in this case, the other set of elements which I've given, of course, are going to constitute group 2 elements. And also, we're going to see that the middle range which has been given in terms of relatively lighter green color is going to constitute the transition elements, which of course forms the outer transition elements and the inner transition elements in blue, given at the lower parts given as such. Now, these others are going to be non-metals, and of course what we refer to as the metalloids, which are going to be semi-metals that display both the metallic and of course non-metallic characteristic to some degree. Now, the one labeled in yellow are going to constitute the halogens, which are group 7 elements being listed from fluorine, of course, to tennessine, which is the last part of that specific classification. Now, the last one is going to form a range of noble gases, which we're going to discuss also in some details, perhaps in terms of their specific characteristic. Now, that's going to form our final bit of the concept of group 1 elements in, of course, an overview. That's also going to contribute in assisting us understand the specific classification which they have been categorized as group 1 elements, of course, and the individual periods which we're going to see later in our discussion. So that is it for now, guys. Bye, God bless you. Catch us in our next video.